Hi, I'm excited to be here today with Wayne, and Wayne is the CEO and founder of Terecircuits. And Terecircuits is disrupting the semiconductor packaging industry in a manner of
packaging and
speaking,
assembly.
and packaging and assembly, and which definitely has a lot to do with the supply chain, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's the last mile of delivering semiconductors to the industry. So the last mile is just as important as the first.
Well, I tell you what, living in Long Beach and going down and walking the beach in the morning, seeing all those ships out there, the cargo ships, and I know there's a lot of semiconductor chips probably out there from what I've heard in the news. So definitely any kind of improvement to supply chain probably is needed in this industry. So it sounds like what you're doing is going to help impact, speed up the supply chain and make it more efficient, which is always needed and welcome. So Wayne, I want you to start out talking a little bit about your background, because you have an interesting background ranging from your education in engineering to business, and then you've also been involved in the investment side as well, and now you have the startup company. And kind of tell me a little bit about your background and the journey that led you up to where you are now with Terecircuit.
Sure. I have a triple engineering degree, civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering, but then I ended up being a computer engineer, which had nothing to do with any of those three. And I started out in the storage industry, actually down in Orange County, a company called Emulex. And I was the CTO of Emulex when we launched a new to the world technology based on a new tech called Fibre Channel. It was a great success and made Emulex, really put it on the map. After that, I ended up leaving Emulex and doing my first startup. We IPO'd in 1999, and we were one of NASDAQ's first day gainers in history, top 10 first day gainers in history at our IPO.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
Yeah, we had over $1 billion valuation at IPO. So we were a post-IPO unicorn in that sense. And it was a great success. After that, I actually joined the evil side and joined a big corporation, Seagate. Our CEO had been on my board of directors and asked me to join and help Seagate move into some adjacent markets and innovate. We were able to do that and actually launched another $1 billion industry, which was personal hard drives. Before that, hard drives had been seen as things you only sold to big corporate customers like HP and IBM. And we believed that we could sell them to consumers. And of course, that became a $2 billion line of business for Seagate, 20% of their revenue today. Yeah, and that was my industry that I was originally in, the storage industry. I retired in 2009 to be a retiree and joined Tech Coast Angels, and that didn't work out well. I ended up doing all kinds of side jobs, little CTO for hire work and CMO for hire work, just to stay involved. But mostly was involved in investing and advisory boards. I got introduced to Dr. Jana Sheets, who's the CTO and founder of Terecircuits, about 2 years ago. And I was very impressed with what she was doing. She's a Stanford PhD and had developed a process for assembling microcircuits that was really a solution looking for a problem. But I was intrigued enough with and impressed enough with Dr. Sheets that I wanted to pursue the company more. Did about a year's worth of diligence, and then finally joined the company Terecircuits as the CTO, as the CEO. And that's the company we're talking about today.
And it sounds like then the CTO and founder, the original founder, was a savvy enough founder to know that she was a tech person and probably needed your expertise also on the business side to bring in as the CEO then to run the company in that aspect.
Well, Dr. Sheets had been trying for about 2 years to raise money with as I said, she had a very technical solution that was looking for a business problem to solve. And the first thing we did is we sat down and talked through what industries were and what problems could uniquely be solved with this solution. And we did come up with a handful that have turned out to be really appropriate. And we're getting the kind of traction now that really validates that thesis. So we're really pleased with the way the company's developed. And I think Dr. Sheets would be the first to admit that she's much better in a CTO role than trying to do the business side as well.
Well, and which is great because, from the investor side and everything, you like to see that well-rounded team that, you've got the CTO focusing on the tech aspect and you focusing on the CEO aspect, but you also have that technology background, which makes your role even more effective, I would imagine. So that's great. Wayne, give me, if you could, a short, just what we would call, I guess, an elevator pitch overview of what Terecircuits is doing.
Sure. So if you've looked at what's happening in the global supply chain with semiconductors right now, you know that it's actually the availability of silicon wafers at the very front end of the supply chain that's caused everything from automobiles to microwaves to have problems in delivery. And that just really shows you how any step in the supply chain is completely disruptive to an industry that's as complicated and intricate as semiconductors. The last mile, as I said earlier, is packaging and assembly. And that's where you put the components in a package that can then be put on a circuit board. And the problem is that these circuits now are components that are smaller than a red blood cell. And the way we've traditionally assembled them is with something called pick and place. It's the machine equivalent of hand-eye coordination, literally robots that pick up a component and place it on a circuit board. And that just doesn't work because these components are just too small. And in some cases, like a micro LED television, which is the next gen, there's going to be millions of these devices on one television. So it would take days to assemble something like that with pick and place technology. We've replaced mechanical process with a chemical one in a nutshell. It's a chemical process, which is the same way that nature moves very small things. We can think of it like photosynthesis or protein synthesis. These are all chemical processes. Nature uses mechanical systems like arms and muscles to move big things, but chemical processes to move small things. And that's what we've done for the semiconductor space.
And that, I find that, I'm not a tech person, but I find that fascinating. It makes sense when you really look at it in that aspect. And I think that's a great way to illustrate it. So talk a little bit then about, where you're at as far as your go-to-market, where you're at right now, your B2B type of business, obviously, and where you're at as far as your go-to-market strategy there, your monetization, and some of those elements leading into revenue.
Sure. So we're about midway through our life cycle as a company. We raised about 1.9 million in seed money already, and also a $256,000 non-diluted government grant. So on that funding, we've actually gotten to the point we're at now. Our process is mature. It's been used in a roll-to-roll production technique to deliver RFID chips. And it's also something that we've been working on in demonstrating the very, very small components for a select number of early customers. So 2 of the world's largest display manufacturers are actually in qualification right now with us, and 2 of the world's largest semiconductor manufacturers as well. So those are 2 discrete markets, and they both have different needs, but our solution solves both. One of those companies is Infineon, and they've publicly announced that we're part of their InnoWafer program, and they've identified us as a startup they see as important to the future of the semiconductor industry.
That's great, and that's that gives you great credibility and great kudos to what you're doing. Then, where are you at then, as in terms of revenue? You've already done your raise. I know that Techos Angels was part of your initial round of funding, correct? And then
yes,
you mentioned Golden Seeds as well, which is a fantastic fund out of New York, you had mentioned, and a women-founded fund. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, all women, and they have branches all over, not just New York, but they have an Orange County branch as well. They're in. We have participation from the Silicon Valley group, so they've been very involved and great supporters of the company.
That's great. So where are you at now then with, you have this current raise, where are you at as far as revenue wise, so the investors understand and know where you're at with that?
Right. We're a pre-revenue company at this point.
Okay.
Any new manufacturing process, even one as significant as ours, takes a while to become part of the supply chain. So it takes a while for a couple of reasons. And one is that we're not a capital equipment company. So our process has to be either developed as a full capital equipment tool, a tool that can be used in manufacturing, or we have to partner with existing tool providers. Our goal is to partner with existing tool providers because that's a faster path into the supply chain. Number one, it's also a distribution model that we can leverage. And the third reason is that these are the trusted partners that are already well known to the end users. Companies like Samsung, LG, Infineon, they're going to want to use their trusted tool partners. So those partnerships need to be developed, and they need to evolve. And that's all pre-revenue for us. So we're currently, as I said, in qual with 4 different companies, all very large companies, and things are going very well. What we need this round for is to actually build a small pilot tool ourselves. Even though we don't plan on being in the capital equipment business, we believe that a pilot tool will help demonstrate a few of the final things that are necessary to get full acceptance. Things like yield off of production is a critical component, testability. These are things that are done in more mature tools.
Sure. And actually, although different, similar into looking like at medical devices and, drugs, that type of thing, where the step to revenue takes a lot longer than what it normally would because of, the product and what you have.
Yes, without the regulatory.
The same process, that it takes a little more to get to that revenue stage because you're in that proving point right now. But it sounds like with the partners you have in place and the interest in what you're doing, it sounds like you're well on your way. So currently you are raising $10 million, is that correct?
Right, we're raising $10 million on our first priced round. And we have about 40% of that in follow-on is soft circled from corporate venture capital. So we really are looking for about $6 million from our Series A lead and their partners.
Okay. And what type of runway is that getting you? What are you going to then accomplish with that? You mentioned a little bit about that.
That's a 2.5. Yeah, 2.5-year runway with that, and there's a lot of flexibility in there, but really what that gives us is the ability to build this pilot tool. The pilot tool, it allows us to get to critical staffing. There's some critical staffing missing on our team to do the technology transfer. So while we've built a tool today that's a lab tool and we can demonstrate that the process works, building the next tool to demonstrate yield and being able to do that technology transfer into the tool partners is the next step.
Okay, and you have, your background obviously is very impressive. You were kind of an overachiever there with your exits and everything you accomplished there, Wayne, which is fantastic. And the founder, is it Janet? If I remember,
Jana.
Mm-hmm. Jana. Talk about the rest of your team. We've heard her name and you've mentioned her and her background and yours. Talk about the rest of your team and why they're important to what you're doing.
Jane is amazing. She is a Stanford PhD, and her background, it touches so many of the technologies that were necessary to be able to deliver this solution. Organic electroluminescence, which it's a mouthful, but it's OLED. And if you have an Apple Watch, it's an OLED display today. And it's the most sophisticated display in the world, but the micro LEDs that I mentioned earlier are going to displace OLED because they're better in every dimension. They just can't be assembled. So her background is micro electroluminescence, also lithography, and our technology borrows lithography from the semiconductor industry, which is how you get the most sophisticated semiconductor nodes, and applies it to assembly and packaging. So that is another skill that she has, and also polymer chemistry. And Jana, her background in polymer chemistry enabled her to develop a unique polymer that's a key part of our process, and it's a consumable in the manufacturing process, so it becomes a source of recurring revenue for us. The second person on our team that's critical is our process engineer. His name's Matt Robinson. And Matt's also a PhD in process engineering, and he was one of the founders of Diamond Foundry. a company which actually makes gem-grade diamonds, not industrial diamonds, but ones that you can sell in a jewelry store. They're indistinguishable from the mine diamonds. I didn't even know you could make them. And unfortunately, he didn't bring a handful with him when he left the company to join Terecircuits. But and then we have a polymer chemist, also a PhD, a recent graduate, but someone who did all of his grad work in exactly the field of polymer chemistry that Jana pioneered. So it's a real A team. Until we hired our fifth person, I was the only one on the team without a PhD, and I'm really proud of the quality of the team we put together.
Super, fantastic. So I think we've covered pretty much the whole territory that we needed to, other than, what's the long-term vision? What's the exit strategy that you foresee for Teracircuit?
Well, this is a company that's being built to be a sustaining material company. We have a couple possible exits. One would be an IPO. We have other material that we could produce and other processes that we could exploit in the whole semiconductor value chain. So there's other stuff on our roadmap. We're not just a one-trick pony. On the other hand, if we do get integrated into some of these key parts of the semiconductor supply chain like we anticipate, multiple exits are possible by acquisition, both from chemical companies interested in our polymer to the companies that build the capital equipment that's used in the semiconductor space, companies like Applied Materials or Lam Research. All these companies are going to need processes like this going forward. And we are one of the key innovators in the space right now. And then, of course, the end users are trying to vertically integrate their supply chain. So they see a chance potentially to leverage this type of technology, so they don't need to go to some of the capital equipment players. We've already seen Apple do that. They're making their own displays in the future. And other companies may do that as well, from LG to Samsung to Facebook and Google, who are also interested in building devices. They're getting into the hardware business.
Well, this has been great finding out more about this, Wayne. Tell me and you come from also the investor side because you've made investments, but tell me, as a startup, what's one of the pain points or roadblocks that you run into that, you'd like to share?
I was telling you earlier, it's like, I can tell you from both sides of the table, this is definitely the harder side. It's the biggest challenge right now is that, sometimes investors can be like lemmings, and they want to follow the pack and they want to invest in what's hot. And there's so many investors out there right now that are saying, well, if it's not AI and it's not blockchain and it's not machine learning, we're not interested in it. And it's like, well, you and the other 200 investors I talked to,
none of you forgot NFTs.
Yeah, there you go, NFTs, right? Yeah, we should issue an NFT on our process, and then I think we'd get a lot more traction. But we are seeing an increased awareness just in the last, at the end of the pandemic here with the semiconductor shortage. People are starting to look a little bit closer at supply chain issues and the different vulnerabilities. And packaging and assembly of semiconductors, 60% of it's done in China and Taiwan. So when you think about supply chain vulnerability, that's a choke point right there that, irregardless of supply and demand, that needs to be addressed. And a lot of the factories that are out there in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, they don't have the technical skill to handle the level of packaging and assembly sophistication that's going to be required for this next generation of products. So if you're investing in IoT and you're investing in 5G and you're investing in these type of really cool technologies, you might ask yourself, how are these products going to be built?
Absolutely.
And we're part of that solution.
You're part of that. So, which kind of leads to, who would be the ideal investor for you? Because just like investors, they have specific type of startups that they want to look at, or different elements, of that startup that they like to look at. As far as I like to invest in the founder or the team or whatever, or the product, whatever it might be, that's what grabs me. What are you looking for in an investor?
The ideal investor for us, it's smart money. It's money that understands that things like the supply chain vulnerability and semiconductors are critical to the economy. Understand the way, willing to have the patience to take a look at what we're doing and really appreciate it. Patient money is important when you're pre-revenue and you're building something that's really for, we go to market in 2025. So if you're looking at flipping an app because you think it's going to be really hot in the Apple Store, this is not the play. So it does require a more sophisticated investor. We like investors who are fascinated by technology and really want to be part of something that is going to be truly disruptive to a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we could talk in detail about the different sectors that we address. There's 3 multi-billion-dollar sectors addressable by this technology, and I get excited about each of them individually, but collectively, it's what attracted me to the company, because really truly disruptive technologies, they don't come along that often, and I've had 2 that I've been involved with. I'd like to make it 3 for 3.
And both the first, second, and third one will be the charm as well. So fantastic. I greatly appreciate this. How can investors, somebody watching this, what's the best way to get in touch with you? And we'll also have it scrolling on the screen or posted on the video as well.
Sure. Rickard, WRICKARD at Terecircuits. That's TERECIRCUITS.com. That's my email, and you can reach out through emails, be great, or you can call me. And no problem with my phone number, 714-272-9093. Happy to take calls as well.
Super. That's fantastic. Wayne, I do have to say that preparing to have this interview with you, I was a little nervous because I am not a technical guy. I explained that to you beforehand, and looking at your project and what you're doing, I'm going, wow, this is really technical, and I don't understand a lot of this. This interview really, I thought you did well, because I understand exactly what you're doing. It makes sense. And I think you did a great job of sharing what you're doing without any visuals, making it easy to understand. And, I thank you for that. And it's been a pleasure, speaking with you and finding out more about Terecircuit.
Thank you, Jerry. I love to talk about it. I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dave. Wayne, have a great day.
You too.